Thank you. Thank you for having me here. In the high point when World War II was in pitched battle in the in 1944, the Austrian scholar Hayek wrote a book, The Road to Serfdom, explaining what the dangers were for things like not just fascism and Nazism, which overtook Germany, but also its real equal counterpart, Marxism. And that's why my piece I wrote on the road to serfdom, because what we're seeing right now in Europe, as a matter of policy among the countries, and we're seeing it here, is that citizens are being turned into subjects by their elites purposely to do so. And I think we need to start taking account of the fact that we're on the road to serfdom by people who want to put us there. I think it's very important to point out that in the European Court of Human Rights document, the one where they said she was babbling and her babbling wandered into hate speech, they cited Bukhari, which was the site, because I've read the case, they cited Bukhari, the specific Bukhari citation she used to justify her statement on Muhammad.
And
Bukhari is the number one hadith scholar in Islamic law, and his hadith are understood to be dispositive. So the point being is, now I'd like to go back to our history. I think it was in 2013, I think the first time we attended the OSCE together in Warsaw, Poland, that we went to a forum where the Turks were there, and they basically carry the water for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and they had their European OSCE, European
Organization for Security
and Cooperation in Europe. I kept tripping on E. It's not an O, right? People who were doing the Islamophobia narrative, and it was in that forum with all the players there that we got them to admit something that is still true today. Islamophobia has no core meaning. You know, I want you to understand something. Hate speech has no core meaning. And it's very important to understand that the reason they run parallel with each other is because they're applications of the same narrative. Why is this important? Because with the huge effort of the Islamic world, the Brotherhood in America, the organization, the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, to criminalize Islamophobia when it has no meaning, is that it gives the state the power to arrest you for any reason or no reason at all. You have given a complete arbitrary writ to them. The same is true with hate speech. So we can not only show this year that organizations have recognized that still Islamophobia has no core meaning, but also recognizing that as the UN is powering into the hate speech narrative to get people to legislate and criminalize it, they are still officially stating it has no meaning. Well, what is this? Well, I'm not going to go into detail now, but what you would call that is a political warfare mass line effort. And we need to understand what political warfare mass line efforts are if we're going to understand how to get at this. And as part of a mass line effort, what are you seeing? You're seeing a united front. And what is that united front? That united front is the alliance of the neo-Marxist left. And I'm going to tell you, if you're still wondering about whether to use the word Marxist or communist, you're still on the, if you can't run with the big dogs, you better stay on the porch. If you're not willing to bring that language in there, you're really not in the game except to get in the way of people who will. That there is an actual alliance between the neo-Marxist left and the Islamic movement. And they say so, and they organize them, and they converge at the narrative level. What is the narrative level? It's the hate speech narrative. The hate speech narrative that evolved out of the politically correct narrative, which is also a neo-Marxist meme. This becomes important because what you're seeing right now is we got the European countries and the OIC, Turkey, to admit that Islamophobia had no meaning. A couple years later, we were in Austria at an OSCE meeting, and what did we get? An official panel of the OSCE to admit that saying something known to be true can constitute hate speech. And I want to read what was explicitly stated there, because when you read the European Court of Human Rights explanation for why they prosecuted her, I want you to realize they're babbling there, and this is the real standard. that she got convicted on, and it's the same standard you hear our left-wing politicians try to enact here. This is from the woman who stated it on the panel. Sometimes when you report on facts, and these facts point out a community, then it has to be a source of hateful speech. So your question was, does that mean that hiding the truth can be a means to tackle hate speech? I would answer, sometimes it can, and sometimes it can't. So when is hate speech not hate speech? Well, when they're coming after you. And when is hate speech really hate speech? When they're saying it. So when you see people haplessly, or our politicians whine, cry in their, soup about how come they're going after them but they're not coming after us. It's because the narrative is designed to go after them. It's to go after you. That's the standard that was applied to her. And until we start recognizing the mass line effort, which is a political warfare assault, the Maoist insurgency model, if you will, and understand it clean that way and put it in that language, we will always be bantering around using DC conservative liberal language that is itself ossified. It no longer addresses anything. So what I'd like to point out is we basically had that down. She was convicted for it, and as recently as this September, we actually rammed it right down their throat. Would you say? We went to the OSC and we did interventions and we just pushed it right down their throat. So much so that the American diplomat had to read a legal statement saying, well, America is not, we're not a part of that. And of course, they kind of were. But with that, I had all these quotes I was going to read, but what I'd like to finish with is just to point out that what you see is a binary in Europe that now is influencing the world. The binary is from the neo-Marxist left, you hate yourself so much that you want to empower the other to destroy you, or you're on the fascist right, which is you love yourself so much you got to destroy everybody else. And because we call it left-right, we're missing the point that from the beginning it was a binary created, well, you go way far back, but we could put it into the Hegelian dialectic, understood properly. And once you put it in there, regardless of which side of that binary you're on, you're always on a path to destruction. And I will tell you, that's the path to destruction that Hayek was talking about when Austria went down the road of serfdom, that they got pulled back out of, that their leaders are pushing them back into, just like our leaders are doing here today.
Yep.